Good afternoon from those of us who are here in their physical presence and those who attend through the internet. Now we will deal for half an hour with a subject that is up in the priority, both the agenda of public debates in states and companies, and this is the ESG subjects, and we'll try to relate that to taxation. For this reason, we'll have two persons with us from the field of companies, Madam Maria Theodoulidou from the Fourlis group, head of the financial services, and Mr. Mountouris from Hellenic Petroleum, who is head of health and safety in the workplace and sustainable development. So let us start with the first round of questions, have to do with the shift towards green policies. We've been witnessing the previous years that companies tend to place the emphasis on creating value for the shareholders, occasionally ignoring some business practices which might not have the same benefit for the surrounding community, the society, and the environment at large. This approach is no longer sustainable, neither in the mid nor in the long term. Therefore, companies now need to strike a balance between the interests of a broad spectrum of stakeholders, taking action over the most so vis-à-vis the environment, the society, but also enhancing their internal governance. So all those actions undertaken by companies currently, to what extent can they be considered a long-term investment and not an additional necessary cost? Let me start with Madam Theodoulidou. Thank you, Yorgos. Thank you for the excellent introduction and the most interesting question. Let me start with the title of a recent information campaign of the house market department of the IKEA stores, that says a brand new day starts from the house, from home, and describes how in minimal daily steps we can reduce or minimize our environmental footprint. And with easy actions, daily actions, we can create a sustainable life in-house. Imagine how this can be easily transferred to companies, organizations, where we are for many hours each day, where we spend most of our time, actually. The notion of sustainability, as we know, is within this ESG, that is environment, society, governance, which the acronym stands for. And to give this dimension, the 10 most important risks, as we see it, related with the notion of sustainability, according to real valid studies, are the following. First of all, business morality, the incentives and benefits offered to the employees, issues related with the transition to renewable energy sources, issues related with the energy cost, its maintenance, and the reduction, of course, of curtailing the consumption, the relation with investors, the effectiveness of board of directors meetings, human rights, the risks of environmental change and the way we handle that, and of course the appropriate working environment. So for these 10 most important risks, which at the same time also are major opportunities, because as far as sustainability is concerned, risks can at the same time be viewed as opportunities. So with regard to dealing with those risks and opportunities, companies have traced their strategy, have laid down their plans, have planned actions, they have planned systems, they have allocated resources, and therefore implement a plan, and at the end of the day also draft a report so as to inform all those stakeholders with regard to the progress of the actions affected. All that because precisely they want to prove the added value they have offered. So all this is a know-how acquired by the company on the management of these risks/opportunities, and this know-how obviously does not concern a single use, fiscal year that is, but regards more fiscal years. And this is precisely why this is viewed as an investment. It is an investment which at the same time is also a major comparative advantage of a company because it helps it making better decisions. It has accountability, and these times, this dynamic environment the company lives, where all things are interrelated and focused on the human being and the planet and the critical turn, I would say that this is the unique comparative advantage companies have so as to deal with those issues. Thank you, Maria. Now let us come to Antonis and have his view. I understand that this is a very important subject, which indeed offers a comparative advantage to companies. Antonis, how do you view things? Well, my view as well, first of all, thank you for the invitation in this most interesting discussion. Obviously, my view is precisely that whatever you mentioned is not a cost, an additional burden, but actually is an investment because ESG is a mega trend for companies. It is an investment that will offer crystal clear, good financial results. As you knew, ESG criteria were the non-financial indices, but now everybody has understood that these indices have also a direct and calculable financial results. If I tried to describe this comparative advantage that is offered and the critical changes needed in order to fulfill those criteria, I would stress mainly two things. The first is that with the establishment of an aspiring, ambitious ESG strategy, which includes replanning of the way revenues are generated. The second important part is the creation of the appropriate structure with direct involvement of the BOD and, of course, high executives, and integration of all the organizational units, because, you know, ESG is not an issue of a specific unit, division of a company. It must be integrated throughout its procedure. And the third, I would say, would be the quantitative figures and their presentation to the involved parties, so as for the company to really be able to draw and reap the fruit of those advantages from such an ambitious ESG policy. To that, I would like to further enhance the part of attracting investors, foreign investors. It is clearly a major advantage given by this quantifiable criteria of ESG, and this is an important part in the assessment and due diligence process of prospect investors. The fact that companies have integrated the ESG criteria, it is easier for them to adopt new technologies. Risks and opportunities management, as mentioned beforehand, the improvement on the relations with the involved parties, another critical part, for the social permit, as we say, for the operation of companies. And perhaps last but not least would be the maintenance of a high quality human resources and attracting new talents, because now companies also need new talents, to attract new talents for this brand new future, which is very different to the past and with major challenges. Therefore, I would say that these companies, in order to deal with these major challenges, the companies that will manage to act quickly in a daring manner and in a strategic perspective of the criteria of ESG are those that will excel and will be rewarded for that. Thank you. I warmly thank you, Antonis. Those were very topical answers in the first round. Let us proceed to the second session of questions. Let us discuss the issue of transparency. And let me first turn to Maria. We see that there is kind of public awareness as far as companies are concerned, that the importance of whatever we call ESG agenda for the prospect investors and society becomes all the more important. And this leads regulatory authorities to establish ever more enhanced rules of financial and non-financial reporting. On the other hand, there is at the same time a feeling of distrust within brackets from society, especially a feeling that I would say was exacerbated during the financial crisis, that at the end of the day, companies do not pay a fair share of taxes as they should. Therefore, all this with higher reporting and financial transparency might also be the foundation for building a new relation of trust between companies, investors, and society. Our, our clients at the end of the day, to what extent do you believe that these certifications will contribute? And this is not one additional bureaucratic process that will further burden the companies. This is an excellent question. I believe that it's also extremely important for all those being in the production process of issuing financial data and information. First of all, they are good quality notifications, and these are the ones exceeding what is dictated by the law. And they offer the possibility of the users of such lists to communicate, offer the possibility to the company, the possibility to communicate to the users their financial situation and with regard to their solvency and sustainability. Thus, with this full picture offered, commits them at large, and this is very important. Furthermore, good quality notifications and disclosures help the companies to communicate the importance of all those strategies in issues of sustainable development as they have planned it, and also to monitor through those notifications what their peers do, the whole sector, that is, how they are doing. Therefore, they draw very valuable information. So, as it happens for the reporting of financial information, there are rules and qualitative characteristics. Likewise, these qualitative characteristics must also be valid for the non-financial reporting. As, for instance, what we say, credibility of the financial accounts, therefore the non-financial, benchmarking, corroboration, clarity, all those qualitative characteristics must also be valid for the Sustainable Development Reports. What is important is that a lot of time is dedicated each year on an annual basis, therefore, to produce this Sustainable Development report. Therefore, it must be at such a level of quality so as for both the issuers to gain and reap that value, but also the users to get the value, to have the picture, the clear picture. So this must be combined. It is true and has been observed, because there is this information available for many years. It has been seen, therefore, that in these reports, there's margin for improvement. I indicatively will mention one with the use of standards or definitions where there are no common definitions in all different standards used for the publications. And therefore, we can't do benchmarking on equal footing. On the other hand, we don't have a quantification of risks or opportunities. That is, the quantification part is missing. Or another issue is that the financial performance of a company is not directly linked with the sustainable development strategy and their effectiveness. Therefore, there can be benchmarking either. There is no bridging between the two. All these are issues which I believe must be solved so as for the non-financial reporting to be at equal footing, at high level as needed for all to be able to deduce the value from that. And the European Commission has already planned various stratagems towards that. Precisely. And I believe, Maria, that although with regard to financial reporting, we are very well. They are the international financial standards, and they dictate precisely what we must disclose. In the non-financial reporting, there's not a standard yet, and therefore to have a comparable information given by all. Thank you, Maria. Now let us come to Andonis, and let me ask him something which I'm quite concerned when I heard it. This transit to the green forms of energy, and I take the opportunity from what the Prime Minister has declared. He said the previous week that starting from 2030, we will no longer have internal combustion engines vehicles sold. Additionally, he said that all edifices built from 2013 and onwards, they will have natural gas boilers and not petrol boilers. Similarly, taxis from 2025 and onwards entering the market should be of zero pollutant or electric vehicles. The same applies to leased cars. I would say that we will see a very aggressive agenda from the state and the European Union, of course, with regard to the transition to green energy. This whole thing also causes some kind of uncertainty and disruption in the market, especially in the group of Hellenic Petroleum. This is something that acquires major interest. So I would like to ask Andonis, how does the group faces all that uncertainty? How does this group contribute towards these national and global goals? And another question, what is the strategy of the group to the so-called circular economy principle and the reduction of CO2 emissions? Thank you for the question, because there's indeed huge interest. We have specific time lag to address because I could speak for hours. Anyway, I'll try to be brief. It is true that we are in the middle of an energy shift. The group Hellenic Petroleum has fully understood the challenges and opportunities in the framework of the zero carbon economy, as we call it, and this transition has been accelerated over the last years. We have a gradual reduction of mineral fuel demand. We have a rapid increase of demand of green energy. We have new sources and new forms of and procedures of generating energy, the transfer of investment houses to ESG houses and investments, and we also have new conditions for the pandemic, where it has been proven that this has accelerated this transit. Our group has kind of compass. It's a new strategic operational plan, the Vision 2025, as we call it. This vision practically aims at then boosting our position in the field of energy. Now we speak of 5 main pillars, setting specific goals in the field of ESG, especially with regard to the reduction of the footprint. This is critical for an energy company. The readaptation of business strategy and funds distribution allocation to these goals of ESG, the adoption of the necessary internal structure, and the adoption of a new brand identity. Within a few days, we will be presenting our new brand identity as a translation of this vision. Now, with regard to the reduction of the carbon footprint, we have set a goal for 50% reduction of carbon footprint by 2025, and among long-term goal for 2050. This reduction includes 30% reduction of direct and indirect emissions through the improvement of generation and electric power of our plants with the use of raw material and fuel of low footprint, C footprint, such as the blue and green hydrogen that we have integrated in the folder, and technologies as also new installations for the storage, capture and storage of CO2. We therefore aspire over the next years, especially the refineries in Elefsina, we have the aspiration to be a paradigm, a model refinery. Our goal is 2 gigabytes by 2030 to be produced by green energy. These are major changes for such a company that will offer additionally 90% of avoidance of CO2 emissions. And the short term, by 2025, 0.6 gigawatts. Our first big step towards that direction is the photovoltaic park of 220 megawatts in northern Greece. You'll see it in full operation at the beginning of next year. And we also have in implementation a digital transition plan, which means a more effective way of operation in all companies. And in sum, I would say that the investment plan of Hellenic Petroleum over the next years will be up to 4 billion euros, 50% of which will be directed towards new technologies, towards green technologies for energy generation. These were, in a nutshell, vis-à-vis the changes affected that the major energy group is planning for the next years. These are major changes. Since we are at an event that also regards taxation, one must also bear into consideration that in this transition, we must keep the security of energy supplies and affordable cost for consumers. And another important factor I would like to stress is that the tax vis-à-vis energy products in Greece is very heavy, far more important than it happens with the other EU countries. And while I was preparing for this discussion, I studied an IOV study for the analysis where it is clearly demonstrated that this percentage is 2.9% of the GDP, while the average rate is 1.9% in the EU. You imagine how important and heavy it is. And it is one of the challenges in the framework of this transit. We make all those investments, but imagine the remaining environment, which is interlinked and complex. I believe, Andonis, with a very well appositely said, we have here amongst us people attending who are in the government. So it is very interesting to have huge taxes that have to be offset in the future in a way. And on the other hand, we have many branches which are actually interlinked with this branch, which should also be transposed somewhere else, which is not very easy always. So yes, I realize that this whole discussion is quite aggressive and speedy, but we need to be very cautious vis-à-vis its management. We've got 5 more minutes, so let me resume to something that I left for the end because we have not much time. And let me ask Maria. I adore all the activities that you mentioned, whatever companies do. But of course, all those actions are costly. And companies have gone through a major period of economic crisis. Now we had the COVID, and that exacerbated things. So the role of the state on the tax system vis-à-vis the encouragement of these actions, could you give me in a nutshell what would be? To my view, companies and organizations investing in sustainability should enjoy reduced tax rates for the overall revenues. The reason is that the value they offer to all stakeholders through the adoption of those best practices allows them, first of all, to be more resilient, whatever happens domestically or externally. Second, they can have better perspectives of financial performance. Third, they can have cheaper access to capital markets. They can also create long-term relations with their shareholders and those investing in them. They also increase employability with more jobs that they create, and furthermore, their suppliers support them throughout the chain, logistics chain, for all the reasons I mentioned beforehand, because all the investors, customers, and suppliers have the full-fledged picture for the short, medium, and long-term horizon. Andonis, would you like to make a comment? Yes, of course. I would like to add that what we're discussing is extremely important because we must maintain the support of Greek companies, European, I would say, at large, from this aspect, because let me add a very important aspect, that of the competitivity of European industry and in the energy sector in comparison to states outside the European Union, which do not have the same commitments for reducing the environment footprint. And therefore, that creates a non-equal playing field. There must be special care for the protection of competitiveness of Greek economy. We have witnessed that in the previous years, but now it's far more intense and far more important, the framework of this transit. All companies must be sustained, so it's for this transit to be smooth, both for the consumer and this industry. I cannot but agree with you. It has been a most constructive discussion. I thank you. We finish here. So I pass the floor to the next session.